greatest drama, the memorable story of the great among us, written by you, the people.
This chapter, Mr. Republican, the story of Robert A. Taft. The White House was always familiar to Robert Alphonso Taft. His father, William Howard Taft, was a great American president and a great leader of the Republican Party. From him, perhaps, Robert Taft inherited his talent for politics and staunched republicanism. Bob Taft was a child in the 1890s when Papa began climbing the political ladder. He dressed accordingly when Papa became Secretary of War. In 1908, a family photo, Papa had just been elected president. Young Bob at that time was a student at Yale University, brilliant, hard-working, and rather shy. Graduating at the head of his class, Taft entered Harvard Law School. There, too, he won highest honors. After the First World War, he worked in the American Relief Administration with Herbert Hoover. Much of Europe was starving. Food was supplied by the United States under the supervision of Hoover and Taft. He was married by now to Martha Bowers, and they made an ideal couple. In 1919, they moved into their new home, Sky Farm, near Cincinnati, Ohio. Then came years of hard work on the farm and in Taft's law office. But Bob Taft enjoyed work, and success as a lawyer came rapidly. Entering politics, he ran for the United States Senate. Election day 1938. The voters were accustomed to blood and thunder election oratory. Would they respond to Taft's common sense approach to politics? The morning after election, Bob and Martha had campaigned together as a team. Now the verdict. The Tafts moved to Washington, where the White House occupant was Franklin Roosevelt. He and his fellow Democrats were firmly in the saddle. Republicans couldn't stop that man. The new senator from Ohio swiftly became a Republican leader. Ripping into the New Deal, he accused Democrats of dividing the nation. Of Republicans, he said,
"The Republican Party insists upon equality of opportunity for all Americans, regardless of race, color, or creed, in the economic, educational, political, and military life of the nation."
Soon, the Taft home in Washington was an unofficial headquarters for Senate Republicans. With Martha's help, Bob Taft outlined Republican policy in speech after speech. In those manuscripts, he set down exactly what he believed. His wife might accuse him of lacking tact, not honesty. When the 1940 Republican convention was held in Philadelphia, Bob Taft was a strong candidate for Republican presidential nomination. He was frankly eager for the nomination, wanted to follow his father into the White House. But Wendell Willkie was a stronger candidate, and he was selected. 1944, another presidential election year. As the delegates gathered in Chicago to choose a nominee, Taft was again among the leading candidates. He had strong support among the state delegations, but Governor Tom Dewey of New York was there too, and he won the nomination. To the Republican convention of 1948 went Bob Taft in the spirit of do or die. He was known now as Mr. Republican, but beneath the display of confidence shown by Taft was the fear that Tom Dewey might win again. The fear was well justified. For the second time, Tom Dewey became the Republican standard bearer. Disappointed and weary, Bob Taft took a vacation from politics. He'd done his best and failed. Better to forget the bitterness of convention struggles and the hurt of rejection by his party. With friends, he fished in clearer waters. An enthusiastic golfer, he played often with General Omar Bradley. Bob Taft was taking it easy. His presidential ambitions were ended. Robert Taft returned to the Senate after his defeat at the 1948 Republican Convention and redoubled his efforts as a legislator. He had co-authored the Taft-Hartley Labor Act, which was bitterly resisted by organized labor. Now he secured passage of 28 amendments to the law. With those changes, Taft hoped to satisfy labor's objections. His hopes were disappointed. The trade unions swore to defeat his bid for re-election to the Senate. Mr. Republican knew the danger in that 1950 senatorial campaign. Labor was strong in Ohio. With loyal supporters, he prepared for the fight of his political life and campaigned vigorously. Election day was the climax of one of the greatest battles in Ohio politics. Union men and farmers had been bombarded with pleas to vote against Taft. He needed a miracle to win, and the miracle happened. Mr. Republican was re-elected by a huge majority. Back to Washington and Congress he went. Republicans welcomed him back with elation. Taft's overwhelming victory established him as their supreme spokesman. It also revived his ambition to run for President of the United States. Swinging around the country, Taft rallied support for the Republican National Convention of 1952. On every domestic and foreign issue, he revealed his opinions frankly and fearlessly. He shook hands with friends and admirers until he was arm-weary. No detail was overlooked in the struggle for convention delegates. In contest after contest, he emerged victorious. The prospects for success in 1952 looked good. A family reunion before going to the Republican Convention. Taft didn't lack glamour for his grandchildren. With a good luck kiss, they sent him off to his severest ordeal. Mr. Republican's followers gathered in Chicago with 530 pledged votes. 604 were needed to win the nomination. But at that convention was a great opponent, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Ike was irresistible. He won on the first ballot.
Taft, 280. Eisenhower, 845.
Eisenhower triumphed. For Taft, deepest sorrow. He was too old to try again for the Republican nomination. The cheers of the crowd would never be for him. After the convention, Bob Taft journeyed to Eisenhower's home in New York. At stake was the unity of the party. Satisfied that Ike would uphold Republican ideals, Taft pledged his support in the election campaign. He kept that promise faithfully, closing ranks with Eisenhower for the good of the party. He campaigned for Ike. Without him, Eisenhower might not have reached the White House. When the new president announced his cabinet members, not all of them were agreeable to Senator Taft. But on the whole, the alliance continued smoothly. Both men loved golf. And it was during a golfing match that Taft's last ordeal began. He was the president's guest in April 1953. As he teed off, Taft felt stiffness and pain in his left hip. At the time, it didn't seem very important. Some weeks later, he was hobbling about on crutches. But he shrugged aside all questions about his ailment. Nothing much, he said. Bravely, he concealed the truth. It was cancer. Into a cancer treatment hospital, he went in a forlorn effort to halt the spread of the disease. But he was beyond help. In July 1953, he passed away. Washington's flags at half-mast, and mourners entering the Capitol where Robert Taft was brought to lie in state. Rich man, poor man, Republican and Democrat, all joined now in mourning. For President Eisenhower, Taft's death was a double loss. He had admired Taft as a man and depended on his leadership in Congress. In the Capitol, Robert Taft had become great. There he would always be remembered as Mr. Republican.
Be with us again next week at this time when the greatest drama, true film biographies of the great among us, again comes your way.